delay. I really wanted to film this horizontally, but YouTube does not want me to do that today. So, unfortunately, we are going to film vertically. So I'm just readjusting my setup here. Okay. Oh no, we don't want that. Okay. Welcome to my live. There's 2 people here. Okay, cool. So today I am going to be showing y'all how I mend some jeans, and I have posted some shorts and reels about this, but I thought it would be fun to show you in person and just be able to chat along the way and answer any questions you might have. So this particular client, I have, if you can see the stitching, I have actually mended these before. But what happens is in a high traffic area like the crotch where your legs are rubbing together, I believe this client also maybe rides horses. So this area just gets a lot of wear. It's usually like the first place to go, that and maybe the knees, but it's usually the first place to go on a pair of jeans. So the fabric just starts to wear thin, and you can repair it. But if they're a well-worn pair of jeans, you're probably going to, as more of the fabric starts to wear thin, you're probably going to need to repair more. So, and sometimes there are points where I have to just tell clients, like, it's time to let these go. These have a couple more wears in them, I'm sure. So first off, I wanted to mention that I use a fusible interfacing, and I prefer the woven kind. The non-woven feels very plasticky to me, and it just, the woven kind is actually fusible interfacing on fabric. Hi. And the non-woven, it just feels like you can touch it and it feels like the iron's gonna melt it. So I like the woven interfacing, and if the hole is like this, where I can hold the fabric up and it's not like there's not actual chunks missing, then I will just use interfacing. Hi, welcome. We are repairing some denim today. If there is like actual pieces missing from the denim, then I will use actual pieces of denim, like a patch. I still prefer to go from the inside, and in order to help that hold that in place, I will use hem tape and just cut pieces of it, fuse it to the inside of the pant, and then continue with the same technique I'm going to show y'all today. But sometimes you need a little bit more coverage than what we can get with just fusible. This is still pretty intact. There's not like an actual chunk missing, so I am going to use the fusible interfacing. So the first thing I'm going to do, I like to use a tailoring ham for this, and I'm going to just open the jeans up from the waist and try to get my surface area where the repair needs to be made as flat as possible. So I want this nice and flat, and then I'm going to cut a piece of interfacing to cover that area, which is why I save all of my weird scraps of interfacing. I save them for this purpose. And you want it to be fairly bigger than the rip that you are repairing. And I'm gonna go this way, and wherever you're not stitching on the fusible is eventually gonna pull away with wear, but that's okay. We're gonna stitch over the main part, but for our mending purposes, you really want to cover the hole as much as possible. And then I'm going to take my hot iron and go ahead and fuse that down. And again, this is on the inside of the jeans. So I'm going to hit it with a little bit of steam. I don't actually think I have any water in here. And I like to do a bigger area than the rip calls for, because as I said, it's a high traffic area, so that is going to, even though we're only ripped in one spot, the fabric is probably going to wear as even more as with a lot of wear. And these I know are a favorite pair of jeans, so I want to try to give her as much more wear as possible. And she has another spot over here, and you can see my previous fixes, and then right next to it, it just starts to wear more. This is just when the fabric really is becoming very thin from lots of wear. So we're gonna try to go a little bit bigger, and I'm even gonna go over my previous stitching a little bit. If you're here, comment below where you are joining me from. I would love to know. Let me see. And I said at the beginning of the video that I really wanted to film this horizontally, but YouTube did not want me to do that. So y'all get a vertical video today. I'm not sure how that's gonna go on the replay. We will have to wait and see. Okay. Again, I want the inside of this where I'm ironing, where I'm fusing, to be as flat as possible, which is a little bit tricky when you're working up in a crotch, because this is not meant to be flat. And someone had asked me before, in a previous video, doesn't this make the crotch, make that area stiff? Yes, it does, especially when you first finish. But that is kind of good, because this is, like I said, a well-worn area. The fabric is already starting to wear and tear. As you wash it, it will thin up and feel more comfortable, so it might feel a little bit stiff when you first do the repair, but with washing, it's going to soften up, and of course with wear, it's going to do to the interfacing what it's already been doing to the pants. Now this spot right here, Vancouver, hi. So this spot right here is not torn. I repaired a tear here. However, you see how the fabric is kind of like bubbling? That is a clue that this fabric is wearing thin here. Probably this is a stretch denim, so probably the spandex is starting to wear here. It's not like cinching back together as good as it used to. So even though that's not torn, I'm going to give her a little bit more stability in that area as well. And again, I'm just gonna lay it flat. This is a woven fusible interfacing. I buy it by the bolt, and I like the medium weight, something that I can kind of use. I don't like to get too heavyweight of an interfacing when I'm making like lighter garments. It can kind of really weigh down a collar or something like that. Okay, so we have our patches on the inside. Now we can't just leave this like this because we are not going to, it's when it washes, this fusible is gonna slowly peel away. So now we're gonna head over to the sewing machine, and I'm just gonna carry y'all with me. You can see my studio back there. And let me put you here. Okay, so while I'm at the machine, I won't be able to see your comments as quickly, but I'm gonna try to peek up whenever I can. Okay, so my favorite thread to use for this is this. You wanna find a thread that matches the jeans. I really love this denim thread from Coats and Clark. They actually carry this at my Walmart. And I don't know if you can see, but it has like that variegated coloring, kind of like real denim does. And I find it works great for many washes of denim. But you always want to test it. I have just blindly grabbed this color before to use on jeans without holding it up. But that looks pretty good. And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes it's too dark, sometimes it's too light. You want to match the color as closely as possible. If you don't have a thread like this, or if this isn't quite right, and you're working in an area that does kind of vary, that has some fading, which if you're repairing, it probably has some fading because fading is caused by wear. You're maybe going to want to do a double pass in 2 different colors of thread. So if you don't have this color, you might want to go once in like a darker blue and then again in like a lighter blue to kind of create that variegated coloring. And I am going to set, let me see, can I zoom? Yes, I can. I'm gonna set my stitch length pretty low for this. And then when I'm doing this, I'm gonna do it from the right side of the jeans. And I'm also want to look for the direction of the weave of the fabric. So in this case, the twill is going this way. So I'm gonna stitch, I wanna stitch with the weave of the fabric. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to, I always forget which side I like to start, because you don't want to start in the middle. You're gonna kind of work your way along. I believe it's this side. I'm gonna start a little bit past my rip, and basically you're just sewing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with a small stitch length. I'm at like a 1. And with the grain of the jean, with the weave of the denim, which is usually going to be since twill is a diagonal weave, you're usually going to be going in a different angle than you're not necessarily going to be perpendicular to your tear. Okay, so I'm just going to get started, and basically I'm going back and forth very slowly, and as I do this, I'm gradually pulling, gradually and gently pulling the jeans to the left so that I'm slowly working over the whole tear. And I'm gonna go higher and lower than the tear than I need to go. It's kind of a fun alteration because you can just, especially if you have a machine like mine where your reverse button is like super close to your sewing, you just stitch like crazy. If anyone has any questions, I am keeping an eye on the thing. One thing I do want to do while I'm guiding this, I'm not pulling. I don't want to actually, especially since this is stretched denim, I don't want to stretch the jeans, and that's because that'll give me a distorted crotch. I have, since the fusible underneath is woven, it doesn't have a stretch, it's gonna hold my shape in place pretty well, but I want to be careful that as I'm moving the fabric through the machine, I'm not actually stretching. It's just a gentle guidance in the correct direction. And sometimes if you feel like you sort of want to go over some spots more, I would say leave it and go back over again at a later time. Again, I'm trying to stay with the weave of the denim. My stitches are pretty close together. My rows are very close together. They actually have machines that reweave the actual fabric called darning machines. I'm not fortunate enough to own one of those, but we're sort of doing a mock darning today. So one thing that I do find, let me zoom in a little bit more, when I get close to the seam, I'm close to a seam here, the back of my presser foot is not going to want to go over that seam very well. So I'm going to change directions. And since the front of my presser foot has this little lip, like a ski, it's going to go over this seam a lot better. I do try to actually stitch up onto the seam. I feel like it, since there's a lot of layers right there, I feel like it sort of makes it a little bit more secure. So that is my first pass. Let's see how that looks. There's a little bit of bubbling. I pulled a little bit too much there. But there is our first repair. That's what it looks like from the front. And this is what it looks like from the back. So now I'm going to move over here where we have this fix here and do that area. Again, I want my stitches to go in the direction of the fabric. I'm working with a seam here, so I want to position myself where the presser foot is going, where I'm going straight over the seam rather than going backwards over the seam. The back of my foot is not going to want to go over that. And I had a bit of a repair here already, so I'm going to kind of weave these two together. Very short stitch length. Very close together rows. Not pulling too much. Is this relaxing for anybody else? Sometimes I feel like I hypnotize myself. If I do need to guide, if you do need to pull a little to guide, I find it's more sturdy to pull on the seam line rather than pulling the fabric. More common alterations that I do, mending that I do, especially around here because we live in the country. Everybody wears jeans. Okay, and I'm also, going to, I noticed that I have some wear, let's see, here and here. This is along a seam. I have some layers under here. I'm gonna go ahead and secure those. Just while we're all up in here, might as well keep those from turning into anything worse. Okay. And then down here. If you have any questions about this technique or alterations in general, feel free to pop them in the comments. zoom out. Okay, so that is our second repair. Can't really see it from back here. If you look up close, we have some nice repair here from the inside. It looks like this. And I will finish this part where this fabric is not torn yet, but it is fraying. So I'm gonna go over this when I'm done talking to you guys, because I put some interfacing back here. And that is how I repair tears in denim. Sometimes you can have like a magic moment and get a really great match where you hardly see it at all. This is pretty good. Sometimes it is not quite as clean as far as the color match of the thread and the denim. Sometimes you can see it a little bit more. And even sometimes in the same pants, depending on where the denim is faded, you can see it more in certain places than other places. But I feel like it holds up pretty well. All of that stitching adds to the strength of the fabric. And as long as you can like get the area big enough, you can kind of feel if it's worn or not worn. You can get the area, oh, there's another little, I'm gonna hit that area as well. It'll hold up pretty well. And you can even do this on knees. Again, if it's like a gaping hole, I will put actual denim behind it rather than just interfacing. So, and that is my denim repair. Thank you so much for joining me live. You can give me a comment if there are other repairs or alterations you would like to see. I am going to share this video. It's vertical, so I don't know how that's gonna work because it's not a short. So I don't know how it's gonna go with secondhand viewing, but we will give it a try. I really appreciate everyone joining me today, and happy sewing. Bye.